The Indo-Pakistani War of 1971 was a brief but decisive conflict that lasted only 13 days. It primarily focused on the liberation of East Pakistan, which would become the independent nation of Bangladesh. The roots of this conflict ran deep, stemming from political and cultural differences between East and West Pakistan. These differences were stark, despite both regions sharing the Islamic faith as a unifying factor. The 1970 general elections in Pakistan served as a major catalyst for the war. The Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, won a landslide victory in East Pakistan. They secured a majority in the National Assembly. Their platform championed greater autonomy and rights for East Pakistan. However, the West Pakistani political establishment refused to accept the election results. This refusal was a fatal miscalculation. The West Pakistani elite, particularly the military junta led by Yahya Khan, feared the Awami League's mandate. They saw it as a threat to their power and control over the entirety of Pakistan. This denial of democratic rights and representation to East Pakistan fueled pre-existing tensions. The situation continued to deteriorate rapidly. The Bengali people of East Pakistan, already marginalized and facing economic disparity, felt betrayed by the West Pakistani leadership. The stage was set for a confrontation. The dream of a unified Pakistan was fading. The world watched as events unfolded in South Asia. A new chapter in the region's history was about to be written. In March 1971, the Pakistani military launched a brutal crackdown on the Bengali population of East Pakistan, codenamed Operation Searchlight. This operation was intended to suppress the Bengali nationalist movement by force. The Pakistani army, dominated by West Pakistani officers, unleashed a campaign of terror and violence against unarmed civilians. Operation Searchlight targeted Bengali intellectuals, students, politicians, and anyone suspected of supporting independence. The scale of the atrocities was staggering. Thousands were killed, and countless others were subjected to torture, rape, and displacement. The international community condemned the violence, but the Pakistani government remained defiant. The brutality of Operation Searchlight triggered a massive refugee crisis. Millions of Bengalis fled their homes in East Pakistan, seeking safety and refuge in neighboring India. The sheer scale of the exodus was unprecedented, overwhelming Indian border towns and villages. The refugees carried harrowing tales of the Pakistani army's brutality. India, already burdened by its own socio-economic challenges, faced a humanitarian crisis. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's government provided shelter, food, and medical aid to the refugees. However, the influx strained resources and had a profound impact on India's economy and security. The world watched as a humanitarian disaster unfolded. See, India's response to the crisis in East Pakistan was multifaceted. On the one hand, India provided humanitarian aid and support to the millions of refugees who had crossed the border. On the other hand, India also began to provide military and logistical support to the Mukti Bahini. The Mukti Bahini were Bengali guerrilla fighters resisting the Pakistani army. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi recognized that the crisis in East Pakistan had serious implications for India's security and stability. She also realized the human cost of the conflict was unacceptable. Gandhi engaged in diplomatic efforts to internationalize the issue and pressure Pakistan to end the violence. However, these efforts bore little fruit. As the situation in East Pakistan continued to deteriorate, India began to prepare for the possibility of military intervention. The Indian government authorized the training and equipping of the Mukti Bahini, providing them with weapons, ammunition, and sanctuary. India also began to mobilize its own armed forces, preparing for a potential conflict with Pakistan. On December 3, 1971, Pakistan launched preemptive airstrikes on several Indian air bases in the northwest. These strikes were intended to cripple India's air power and prevent India from intervening in East Pakistan. However, the Pakistani attack had the opposite effect. It unified Indian public opinion against Pakistan and provided India with the casus belli it needed to declare war. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1971 was a resounding military victory for India. The Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force fought with skill and determination on both the eastern and western fronts. In East Pakistan, the Indian Army, fighting alongside the Mukti Bahini, quickly gained the upper hand against the demoralized and poorly supplied Pakistani forces. One of the most significant battles of the war was the Battle of Longowala, where a small contingent of Indian soldiers successfully defended their post against a much larger Pakistani attack. The Indian victory at Longowala, later immortalized in Indian cinema, showcased the courage and tenacity of the Indian soldier. At sea, the Indian Navy executed a daring raid on Karachi, Pakistan's main port, in Operation Trident. The war ended on December 16, 1971, with the unconditional surrender of the Pakistani forces in East Pakistan. This surrender led to the creation of Bangladesh as an independent nation. The war had profound geopolitical implications. It resulted in the dismemberment of Pakistan and the emergence of India as the dominant power in South Asia. The 1971 war cemented India's reputation as a responsible regional power willing to intervene in defense of humanitarian principles. It also highlighted the importance of decisive leadership and military preparedness. The war had a lasting impact on India's strategic thinking, leading to a greater emphasis on self-reliance and military modernization.